Wanted to talk to you about the HHS halting work at high-risk infectious disease labs around the world. And I can't believe this is true, but you tell me. So there was an incident that at a biolab that apparently what happened is there was a personal squabble between people, and a contractor actually punched a hole in the other person's biolab suit. I don't know, to get them sick or whatever, but it was, I mean, is that what happened at that biolab? I think it was at Fort Detrick.
That is exactly what happened.
Oh my
this
gosh.
is something I learned. Yeah, it was. I haven't been scared about anything in this job except for that one thing. I learned about this about 3 weeks in the job. I've been in the job about since the beginning of April. It turns out that there had been a incident a few weeks before. In fact, right before I joined as the NIH director at Fort Detrick, a part of the lab is run by the National Institute of Health, and it's a BSL-4 lab, which is the highest biosecurity level lab. I mean, the experiments done there are on some really nasty bugs. I mean, Ebola, a whole bunch of viruses and pathogens that if it gets out in the population or if it infects lab workers, it's just really quite deadly.
Right.
What I learned was that there had been this incident just a couple of weeks before I joined as director of the NIH, where a lab worker had cut a hole in a biocontainment suit of a fellow worker, with the express intention of getting that worker infected.
Oh my God!
If that had, and apparently it was over some lover stat, or I'm not sure exactly the full details. There's an ongoing investigation of that. What I learned was that the not just that this incident had happened, which actually has a threat not just to the worker but also if the disease gets out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just. I mean, I was absolutely livid. And so what I did is I ordered the lab on an operational shutdown, secured all of the vials of the nasty bugs in a safe environment, made sure that the animals were cared for, that they're in the lab, and we're not gonna open that up until the safety environment on the lab is absolutely solid. The contractor that was overseeing this, I think, did a very lax job. What I learned is that this goes back to the Biden administration, that the safety environment in the lab essentially downplayed these kind of security problems. If you're going to run experiments on these bugs, and I'm not sold that all of these experiments are worth doing, but in any case, if you're going to run them, you have an absolute responsibility to have zero tolerance for safety problems.
Right.
And this is the issue here wasn't just a one-off thing. It was something that was problematic in the safety culture of this lab, where I cannot guarantee that if we reopen the lab right now, that it would be a safe environment.
Oh my
so I won't reopen the lab until that's the case.
Thank you. I mean, shouldn't that person be punished? I mean, that really is attempted murder, and maybe even on a mass scale.
I mean, there's an ongoing investigation, so
Okay.
I probably shouldn't say much more about this.
Okay.
But it's one of those things where, I was actually actively scared when I first heard
Yeah.
this.
I mean, I think Americans are actively scared because none of this stuff should be happening. I mean, we're just an accident or a stupid move or an intentional leak away from mass death. And you keep hearing people like Bill Gates say, we're on the verge of another pandemic. Why? I mean, why are we on the verge of another pandemic? Do you think we are?
I mean, pandemics happen. They've happened all throughout history. The key thing to me, though, Glenn, is we don't want to cause one. We don't want to take steps that increase the risk of them. The irony of this past pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, is that it was very likely caused by actions aimed at stopping pandemics from happening. There was almost this hubris. I mean, it is hubris. There was this idea that we could somehow, if we go into the bat caves of China and all the wild places, bring all of those viruses that we find there and pathogens that we find there into the labs, catalog them, we can somehow prevent all pandemics from happening, make them more transmissible, more dangerous to humans. We can somehow, as a result of that exercise, make it less likely to have pandemics happening. But of course, what we found out is the opposite is true, that you can't do this kind of work entirely safely. And actually, even if you fully accomplish what was the aim of that that research program, which is to go out in the wild places and find the pathogens, you wouldn't protect anybody against the pathogen, because what would happen is when and if the outbreak happens, whatever countermeasures you designed for them would already be out of date, because the evolutionary biology of these viruses is they mutate very rapidly. And so when they got into the population, the countermeasures you prepared for, which you never tested any humans, very likely would not work.
Have we stopped all of the gain-of-function stuff now? Are you convinced it's done?
Yeah, so last week, President Trump signed an absolutely historic executive order that said it puts a pause, a full pause on all gain-of-function work throughout the government. We've implemented that pause at the NIH, and I'm sure the rest of the government has done the same. Over the next 90 days, we're going to develop a framework, and here's how the framework's going to work, right? So you have to be a little careful here. So gain-of-function can mean many things. So for instance, insulin is produced via a gain-of-function exercise. There's no risk of a pandemic being caused by it, but you take a bacteria, E. coli, you change so they can produce insulin, and that's how you produce human insulin. There's a completely safe thing to do. On the other hand, you take a virus like a virus, and that has these like sort of coronavirus-like properties. Add a furin cleavage site and manipulate it so they can infect human cells more easily. Well, now you have the potential to cause a pandemic. If you're going to do an experiment like that, you, the scientist alone, or scientists alone, should not get to decide whether that risk is worth taking. The public should have a say. The public should be able to say, no, there's no matter what knowledge you think you're going to gain from that, it's not worth the risk of causing a worldwide pandemic that's going to kill 20 million people and cost $25 trillion or something. And that's exactly what the framework is going to do. It's going to say, if I, the scientist, wants to run this project, the public will have a veto over that. Say, no, you're not allowed to do it because it's not worth. Most science won't be affected by this. Most science has no chance of causing a pandemic. But any science that does is going to be subject to this very, very strict regulatory framework.
We're on with Dr. J. Bhattacharya, who is a hero in my book, now the director of the National Institutes of Health. Is an apology good enough for the National Institute of Health? I mean, should anybody go to jail for what has happened? And what is that like to walk into that building when you were, enemy number one to many in that building, during the pandemic?
Glenn, it's been interesting. It's certainly a big turn of fate where I was sort of the subject of devastating takedowns and called all kinds of names by folks who were in this building where I now lead. But at the same time, I found many excellent scientists, many people devoted to the advancing human knowledge for benefiting for the benefit of all people. Most scientists are like that. They're not trying to create havoc. And so I've been trying to find allies, and I found a lot of allies in the building. You asked what should happen, regarding apologies. To me, apologies. I think the key thing. I'm very, very happy to apologize on behalf of American public health to the American people for the failures during COVID. But the key thing going forward is reform. How do we change the institution so that it is focused on the health needs of the American people, rather than these utopian schemes to end all pandemics that without any heed whatsoever to the risk that they take? Science is very, very powerful kind of idea and institution, but it needs to be focused on real human needs, real health, and in particular for the NIH, real human health needs. And there have to be guardrails so that scientists understand that they operate in the context of public support. We function on taxpayer money. We have to answer to taxpayers. And so that's been the challenge, is trying to keep the light of science alive while still reminding scientists that we are not acting just as as if we were like independent actors like God. We are actually beholden to the American people.
Dr. J. Bhattacharya, I'm unfortunately have to take a network break. I would love to have you back for a longer podcast. Thank you for everything you did during the COVID nightmare, and thank you for standing up so strongly now, and congratulations on being our director of the NIH.
Thank you, Glenn. So good to talk.
God bless you. Bye-bye.